tonight's MFA Grad Talks. My talk tonight is entitled Beyond the Illusions of Blackness in Contemporary Visual Culture. At the beginning of my MFA studies in 2016, during my first visit to the Museum of Fine Arts, I encountered this painting, Plaid and Bottle by David Sally. I was immediately drawn to it. Here, Sally combines apparently unrelated images, different styles, different genres, like a storyboard for a cinematic montage. However, Sally's interest is apparently counter to the formation of a sequentialized narrative. According to the museum's curatorial staff, his interest here is in the very process of image creation. He's also interested in the manner in which media fragments the formation of rational meaning. For me, there was something more happening in this painting. Each of the three images become a discrete emblem relative to the adjacent image. What struck me most was the intangible filial bond that seemed to resonate between these disparate images. I saw the picture frame and the wall behind it as providing a unifying, compressive space. In a 1990 interview, Martin Kippenberger said, simply to hang a painting on the wall and say that its art is dreadful. The whole network is important. David Joseph, in an article entitled Painting Beside Itself, observes in Kippenberger's statement a summary manifesto of sorts that declares painting's conceptual liberation from the imaginary space within its frame. The painting should no longer be defined as a singular, two-dimensional surface with the property of geometric exteriority that ends at the event horizon of the frame of the gallery's wall. For Joseph, Kippenberger's statement indicates that everything is potentially embraced within the scope of the painting as a network system, a visualized relational system. Self-portrait through the American prism is an installation, a network installation of interrelated polysemous picture elements, pixels. The pixels are painted on paper using oil, acrylic, and enamel paints with other mixed media. I've used many traditional painting techniques and postmodern conceptual ideas to build a complex image structure. I originally conceptualized this project as I studied and questioned the cultural function of literally black figures within contemporary American visual culture. Adapting ideas from critical race theory, I began to study the respective works and critical discourses of artists such as Michael Ray Charles, Robert Colescott, Glenn Ligon, Kerry James Marshall, Betty Sauer, and Kara Walker. Kerry James Marshall's recent retrospective exhibition, Mastery, became the focal point for my visual and lexical inquiry because of Marshall's global importance in the dissemination and validation of the visual motif and the rhetoric in support of the cultural value of the black figure. Jesse Whitehead says this: Marshall emphasizes race in order to combat invisibility of skin darkness by placing extremely black figures as the focus of his work. However, in his book, Colored Pictures, Race and Visual Representation, Michael D. Harris observes that the use of black defined people of African descent in some relationship to the white universe. Furthermore, the use of white devised terms of description culturally contains African Americans within a racial world. By this expression, a racial world, I understand Harris to be speaking of an artifice, a just disenfranchising construct. For the American prism, I wanted to find a visual way to disrupt the false hierarchical racial construct, black and white, that is implied by the literally black figure. I also wanted to visually explore what Marshall calls political invisibility, being and not being, and socio-cultural presence and absence, while simultaneously commenting upon identity politics of difference without taking wholesale recourse to the illusionary black figure. Through the intersection of color-inverted and non-color-inverted painted pixels, as seen here, and the image of their digital inversion on the mobile device, I discovered a visual dialectic that dynamically expressed the multifaceted operation of contemporary racial polarization without using the problematical motif of literal epidermal blackness. As a critical theorist and artist who combines painting, robotics, and computer viruses to create complex works of art, Joseph Nefatal classifies this space as the veractual. The basis of the veractual conception is the emerging of the computed, the virtual, with the uncomputed, corporeal, the actual. This merge, which tends to contradict some dominant technical cliches of our time, is what I call the veractual. This blending of computational virtual space with ordinary viewable space indicates the subsequent emergence of a new topological cognitive vision of connection between the computed virtual and the uncomputed corporeal world. The painter Vincent Desiderio would likely describe the veractual as an emblematic form of technical narrativity. Technical narrativity is the story of the painting's material evolution and the relationship of those materials and techniques with meaning. It has the capacity to promulgate or disrupt the painting's visual cues across the apparent subject matter, which is the dramatic narrative. The technical narrative has two modes, the sequential and the emblematic. Sequential narrativity connects all the visual cues into a readily accessible, sensual continuum. However, emblematic narrativity presents a visual event that creates a break with the expected meaning of an object or a visual cue in order to facilitate a redefinition or re-representation. The American prism expresses both aspects, sequentialization and emblemization. Both forms of technical narrativity are the fruits of perspective, the development of which is attributed to Filippo Brunelleschi in 1415. Here, in the pixel Brunelleschi's mirror, I'm conceptualizing, abstracting the startling view that must have entranced his audience as they peered through Brunelleschi's perspective device. The painted color-inverted pixels, the negatives, also serve as an interference to the straight reading of the traditionally modeled pixels, the positives. The spectator is encouraged to pause and question the nature of the semiotic gap between the positive pixels, the ones that mimic normal ocular view, and the negative or color-inverted pixels. Representational uncertainty is aroused from this phenomenological gap. I think of this as the invisibility factor. The digital media device is used to expand the installation's discursive possibilities. Device functions emblematically. The mobile device provides an explicitly new way for countering and extending a painting's semantic potential. Its use challenges conventional notions of how we experience or view a painting. By using a double inversion, the distinction between analog and digital is effectively blurred. Through the operation of a lexical and visual reversal, the installation is digitally converted on the mobile device's screen. It functions together with the installation's painted images on the gallery wall. What the viewer sees before them is a veractual interface. This doubling signals both disruption and reconciliation of the visual field. Furthermore, it prompts the viewer to question their customary notions of race and difference, particularly the roles implicated by all forms of visual media, including all painted imagery. The fictive surface of one mode of representation is augmented, subverted, and converted into the other. Here, the pixel Michael Dorn actor as Worf, color inverted, is configured adjacent to a textual relief that is entirely painted white, but lexically it reads black. While the inverted black and white double portrait, William Billy Thomas as Buckwheat with a doll, has been configured adjacent to a textual relief that is entirely painted black, but lexically it reads white. A semiotic frame, which is a duality, is formed by these two sets of opposites. One is actual, the other is virtual. The first iteration of this semiotic frame is activated by the spectator's recognition of a possible association between these two sets of images. The lexical conundrum implied by the contradictory color field of the respective pixels, black and white, also create an emblematic visual event, that, as Desiderio writes, signals a breakdown of semiotic comprehension or cultural utility, which signifies a need for re-representation or redefinition of the terms or concepts. The second iteration of the semiotic frame is viewed digitally with the aid of the mobile device set to invert colors or negative mode. The pixels within the virtual image on the mobile device are digitally color inverted. What was once conceived plastically as inverted negative is now electronically positive, normalized, and vice versa. The text black appears colored black and the text white appears colored white. Thus, the image inversion functions as a kind of double consciousness. The point of this is twofold. First, the effects of a racialized economy upon Afro-American consciousness is illustrated as a terminal negation, consciousness loop. It has no resolution. Second, the double inversion acts as a disruption to the association of literal figurative blackness with liberality and political visibility. It's a call into question the spectator's perceptions and participation in the racialized economy. Again, the operation of these pictorial associations can occur at various levels of consciousness. But just to be clear, racialized economy is a neologism. It's a concept that describes what the author Nellie Fuller characterizes as the 9 interconnected areas of all human activity: economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war counter war. This project was initially conceived as an exploration of contemporary racial politics. By calling upon a technical narrativity that combines traditional Western European painting techniques with conceptual photographic space, my intent is to counter the contemporary techniques that use unrealistic black colors to generalize and depersonalize the features of melanated people. As the project has advanced over the course of the last 2 years, I've also begun to see my own studio practice as an expression of a conceptual break away from both contemporary visual culture and what has become known as the atelier movement, and move towards post-contemporary visual culture. Arguably, a thread that is sewn throughout modernism, postmodernism, and the contemporary milieu is a belief in the linear progression of the humanities based on the concept of innovation. Aesthetic notions based upon the past or tradition are generally considered problematical at best. Hence the frequent discourses on the death of painting, particularly any style of painting that utilizes classical techniques of representation that follow the laws of incidence and reflection in depiction of form. As Frank Rendias reminds us, we should therefore no longer refer to the advance of the avant-garde and the regression of painting, but instead to the disappearance of the avant-garde in the face of an increasingly pervasive media culture. This creates a peculiar paradox. Progressive painting does away with the avant-garde. In his essay entitled The Post-Contemporary Paradigm, Brandon Kralik charges that the post-contemporary painting is a response to the technological advances of the age we now live in. For me, the post-contemporary paradigm is an emergent, virtual superstructure in which a broad range of traditions, academic disciplines, technology, and criticality work in conference to arouse linkages across many social cultural boundaries. My thesis project integrates various technical approaches such as realistic painted depictions of light on form, different types of virtual reality, abstraction, certain relational operations, and technology-mediated optical reversals to disrupt stereotypic lexical and pictorial associations. My project invites the viewers to critically engage their own thoughts as well as with one another by looking beyond racialized politics. Thank you.